What's up, everyone? We are back. It is another episode of the Trainman Report. This is episode 33. That's right. If you count, there's 52 weeks in a year. We've done more than a half a year's worth of content. That's right. We are here. We are
I'm shocked as much
NDG's
as you are.
long-winded news show covering local stuff you should care about, trying to put a
Right.
flair on it.
That deserves a train toot.
You might get train toots. Alex wears a variety of different hats.
got a
I wear a
smaller
limited
one
number
there.
of
See,
hats.
That's not bad. Sorry.
For those of you who cannot see this, Alex literally has train whistles, like those wooden ones that you, anyway. So Alex Montagano is here. We have Joseph Lalla with us today.
Awesome.
We are going to be going through the EMSB elections and learning a whole bunch of fun stuff. Fun might be a relative term, but let's call it important stuff that we should find more fun in life. And that's what we try to do here at the Trainman Report. Take the important things and then also advertise your stuff. So if you're a local business and you're an artist or you're somebody and you want to come on our platform and showcase what you do, that's also what the Trainman Report does. And we're happy to eat your food on camera too. Just putting that into the universe.
I like to eat. Major problem I have in my life is sticking things in my mouth.
It's a live show, so if you do have questions, comments, anything like that, feel free to participate and we'll do our best to answer you as we go through it. On that note, Alex, I know you're a big fan of the introductions of our guests and you always prepare something, so I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, so we have on the show Joseph Lalla. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I believe it or not, in CJET and John Avid, I had a girlfriend whose first name was Lala. So there we go.
Ah, okay.
And she was wonderful. I do miss you, Lala. So continuing on this conversation, I'm really pleased and honored to have Joseph Lalla on the show tonight. He is a school commissioner. He was born and raised, brought up his family in NDG, so a true NDGer. And he represents actually Ward 2. There's wards in the school board like electoral makeup. We're going to talk to Joseph about that, and how that works. But he actually is in the ward that he's in the ward that is NEG, essentially NEG Montreal West, if I remember correctly. So you got like Elizabeth Ballantyne in there, I believe. You have Rosalind's not in there. Rosalind is in the Westmount ward, right?
So I'll go through them with you.
Sure, please go ahead.
So, and this is presently, by the way, I have to stress that because for the November election, there are changes to the wards. All right. So
I see.
As we speak, I represent Edinburgh, Elizabeth Ballantyne, and Royal West in Montreal West, and St. Monica, Willingdon, Royal Vale, Mackay, Philippi Layton, as well as Shad Adult Center in NDG.
Shad Adult Center. I don't know that adult center.
It's on Old Orchard.
Right.
It's not very prominent. It's on Old Orchard between Saint Jacques and Upper Lachine.
Right.
It actually used to be, all right, John the 23rd Elementary School.
I see.
Which, because of declining population, all right, at one point we closed the elementary school and are now using it as an adult center.
Yeah, so saying that, you raise that issue, like I'm old enough to remember that in Montreal we had school boards along religious lines, right? We had the Catholic school board, we had the Protestant school board, and then obviously you had the French versions as well. But mostly the French were all Catholics, right? It was kind of like the dynamic of Montreal. And I know that the Protestant and Catholic school board, English school board, was amalgamated in what we call now the English Montreal School Board. And then there's also the Lester Pearson School Board, which is separate, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so in 1998, the school boards were reorganized from denominational, all right, to linguistic. So on the island of Montreal, we have two of those English boards, EMSB and Lester B. Pearson. Lester B. Occupies, let's say, the western half of the island, while EMSB occupies the eastern part of the island. Both
And
boards have about the same number of students.
so talking to that, what we have seen in NEG is, we have seen our population go down, right? We're still trying to struggle to get back up there, but the Anglophone, or talk about the Anglophone community as well. Like you and I are members of that. We're both Italians, but our first language is English, right? That
Right.
was very common of Italians in Montreal during the 40s, 50s, and 60s, is that we went to English Catholic school, usually run by the Irish, and God bless their souls.
Yeah, yeah. And religious orders, by the way, were quite present in the schools up until the 60s.
Yes, religion was a big part of the education that the students would receive in the public schools, and yeah, so there's a lot of dynamic and history about that. But let's go back to the original question, because I'm getting off subject. It was about the size of the Anglophone population in Montreal and in all of its different manifestations, right? The Anglophone Italians, the Anglophone Greeks, the Anglophone Filipinos. That population has been shrinking, has it?
So just to situate the point you're raising, Alex, so in 1976,
Right.
when the PQ first got elected, on the island of Montreal, there were approximately 100,000 students in elementary and high school English. Okay.
Mm.
Today, there are less than half.
Okay.
All right. Less than half. So that is a significant drop, all right, in students. And of course, that resulted in, unfortunately, the closing of a lot of schools. I just mentioned one, John the 23rd in NDG, all right? That's one example, and there are many others.
Yeah, that's not that can't be a fun situation to be in, right? Like, I'm always been in an environment where you're managing growth, but in the Anglophone English community in Montreal, Allophone community in Quebec, focused on the English language, we've been managing like a shrinking population, right? Not It's the reverse of growth. Managing
I have to
contraction,
tell you, Alex, as a school commissioner,
right?
now for almost 17 years, I think one of the worst things I ever had to do, all right, was vote on whether to close a school or not. And not to make a long story, we have a process, and it's a very long process, by the way,
Right.
when we're about to close a school. There's all sorts of steps we have to follow.
Right.
And one of those is that the parents and specifically the governing board of that school, they're invited to come to a council meeting and make a presentation, all right? And you hear these people speaking really from the heart, all right, mentioning their children and all of the good things about the school, and then you have to vote, on whether to close it or not. As I said, that's, for me anyway, that was one of the worst things that we went through. It was not easy, by the way.
So you were around when the Uyghur got closed?
Yes, I was. All right.
I was in
Yeah.
the last grad class of Uyghur ever, so it was like,
Oh, really? Hey,
yeah, it
right.
was a pivotal thing for me. Because, yeah, '05 is when it closed. We graduated in '05, and we saw a couple things happen. I will say, the school did blow the reserve fund, taking us to La Ronde, and that was beautiful. That was the upside of it closing, while the year I graduated, not having further high school. But it was
Right.
kind of weird that everyone else, like, had a high school they could go visit, except for our class, which was just, it's over now.
So I was not actually a school commissioner, Holden, in 2005 when the school closed. I was a school principal myself at the time in the EMSB, so well aware of what was going on. All right, and that was a really sad day, by the way, and uh, not to stretch this out, but you're probably aware that in fact a number of us made an effort, all right, to bring back Wager. All right,
Yeah.
I was part of a organizing committee. All right, a number of commissioners, the late Sid Wise, Marvin Helfenbaum. All right, a number of us commissioners set up a committee. All right, to try to reopen the school, but the numbers just weren't there. Yeah.
I respect that. We arguably did in defense of the school board folk. I think it was like 240 something people were enrolled in the last year. I have one of the smallest grad class photos anybody's ever seen. And like, it's just it sucked because like the teachers were honestly like straight out of movies. Like they almost all had their like because like Wager was an interesting school if anyone knows about its reputation. So like you had a lot of dangerous mind kind of teacher stories playing out inside of that school. People that were so dedicated, and we had simultaneously some of the smartest high school kids you would ever meet mixed with some of the people who did 0% work, and it just destroyed our averages.
But we are using that building, by the way. Okay, so yeah, that's what happens often. We repurpose the building. All right, so there's an adult center there now. There's John Grant High School, and there's also facilities there for adults who are challenged. So we make use of every square foot of that building.
That's good. That's definitely a positive.
Yeah,
Sorry, Alex, go on.
managing contraction has to be like a real cack-ass sandwich. I like this is one of the greatest concerns I have for our community within the city of Montreal or Quebec for that matter is that it's shrinking, and this is never a good thing economically, culturally, and socially for a community to be declining and decreasing, and because of the dynamics of the place that we live in most parts of the world, that would be a major concern. But to many people, they're kind of happy about that, which is kind of sad, right? There's a kind of a
Yeah,
sadness in that, right? And because, as you know, as I do, Joe, that, our communities have contributed in enormous ways to the development of this city, right? We have history here, right? I have history here, and I'm sure you do as well. So
absolutely, absolutely. A lot of history, by the way. I can talk to that another later
no,
on,
no,
but
no, no. We're talking about that now. We want to
oh,
hear. We
Yeah,
ask
let's
our
run it.
guests. We ask our guests because this is a show where you can talk to people and like connect to them on a human level there, Joe. And we always ask our guests their origin story. So do you know the whole idea of the origin story?
uh-huh. So I'm going to go back to before we lose that point about history, by the way. So
Alrighty.
and not to toot my own horn here, whatever, but in 2017, 18, all right,
Mm,
the government was piloting a new what we call the History of Quebec and Canada program, all right?
right.
This is currently taught at secondary 3 and the secondary 4, all right? It's a 2-year program. I have the textbook behind me here in case you wanna see it, all right? So I'm a history teacher, by the way. We'll get into that later before I became a school principal. And specifically, I was a teacher of Canadian history, Quebec history, all right? So I was really, as were many others, by the way, appalled, all right, at that new program, which was being piloted at that time at the lack of reference, all right, to non-Francophone communities, indigenous, all right, it's almost like we never existed. Okay,
Mm.
so
Right.
over the course of that year, actually, I introduced motions at the council meetings, by the way, and they were all unanimously approved and subsequently sent to the ministry, as well as sent to other school boards. All right, and in those motions, all right, if you don't mind me reading, all right, I the motions were asking that the historical contributions of Anglophones, First Nations, and allophones, all right, to the development of the province should be included, all right, in that new program. That English students at that time were not being provided with the same resources as the French students, all right? There was a substantial delay, all right, which ended up really penalizing our student. And more specifically, all right, the motion asked that a minimum of 20% of the program, right, which is not very much, by the way, should be specifically, all right, targeted to include the contributions of the diverse non-francophone communities and their contributions, all right, to the development of the province. I won't say, by the way, that they received it with open arms, but at least the council at the time spoke very strongly, by the way, and it did result in a lot of other stuff. We subsequently, I introduced another motion. We set up a committee of experts in terms of Canadian history, specifically to look at the textbook, by the way, all right, and see what could be done. And that committee of experts, by the way, submitted quite a lengthy report, but the conclusion was trash the textbook and rewrite it completely. All right.
So just to add some context for people that don't know, if I'm not mistaken, this is the one that was like when they rewrote the history of Quebec and Canada in a nutshell or whatever, and then they just kind of removed the existence of English people, women, and anybody that's not a Quebecer from history. Correct. Something to that effect. And yeah, I know it sounds like I'm being hyperbolic.
That's in a nutshell.
But I'm not trying to be like, so like, I think just in case people do come across this and they might think this sounds like a ridiculous thing, it's like, this is the mandated grade 10 history courses that like all students have to have already. And then they literally just rewrote history like in a really weird way that is super against what like the general trend of life is supposed to be going. And if I were to interject my conspiracy theorist self, it was a clear effort to prepare people for later on receiving Quebec news in the way that the government wants it to be perceived, because it's weird.
Not to spend an hour, by the way, talking about this, but along exactly the same lines, by the way, and I wrote and had a letter to the editor of the Gazette published, and I cast a bit of light on that new history museum which is being planned for Quebec City, all right? And it's the same sort of thing. If you read, all right, some of the comments about that museum, again, it seems to be basically a francophone history-oriented museum, all right? It's like, the rest of us don't count.
This is also
time too, and as Alex said, not only the Italian community, but many other communities have made very substantial contributions here that deserve to be recognized.
Yeah, I noticed this trend also, the Pointe de Caillat Museum in Old Montreal. It's like you go there and like, where am I? Where am I in these exhibits? I'm looking for me. Hello? Where's the Italians? Where's the Greeks? You don't find them. Where's the Polish community? They're not there. Where's the Irish, right? But this goes back to the motivation that I had for the screening of What We Choose to Remember. If you remember that film by Guy Rex Rogers. By the way, Guy Rex Rogers has a kit for teachers, right? And is trying to introduce his film and have sort of like an open-ended conversation with the students and professors about the question of history and how we write and record and remember history. And I remember when I took history in university, my history teacher used to say, well, you got to remember one thing about history. It's the winners that write the history, right?
Always.
So, and that is, I think, an important variable of living in Quebec is that you have to keep in mind there's this, the government is playing this really interventionist role into the narrative of what society, culture, and history should be, or what we should remember. And I just find it very odd. I find it very odd about what I'm about from an open-minded perspective. But wait, hold on, Joe. We still need to go to your origin story there, Joseph. So you were born were you born in NEG?
No, actually, my parents immigrated here when I was 2 years old.
Oh,
So
so you were born in the home country, Italy
I
itself.
was.
Where
So
in Italy were you born?
Providente Campobasso.
I'm from Campobasso as well.
Oh,
Everybody,
right.
all
There
the
we
all the
go.
Italians in Montreal from Campobasso. Well,
All
my
right.
Italian half.
We gotta meet up for an espresso
Yeah, yeah.
and
Do you have
talk
this?
about.
Do you have the same problem I have, Joe? Where you like to put stuff in your mouth, like good food? Is this a problem you have as well?
Absolutely, you better believe it. Yeah,
All right,
okay.
go on. So you
Uh,
immigrated?
yeah, so I grew up actually in I'll say Lower NDG, the Saint Raymond area,
Yes, yes, know it
or,
well.
or what we called at that time below the tracks. All right, yeah, that's
They
what
still call it that. They
It's
still
still
call it
called that.
yeah,
It's
still
my,
call it
my
that. Yeah.
homie lives there. He's a rapper. He's got a whole movement called Below the Tracks.
There's even a
So,
Facebook group called NEG Below the Tracks. Yes.
yeah. So I went to St. Raymond Elementary, actually, which is no longer there, on the corner of Upper Lachine and Gilward. There are duplexes there. So the school was demolished when it was too old, by the way, and that's when John the 23rd, all right, was opened, the new school.
Right.
Um, Went to high school and to Marymount, by the way, the old Marymount, all right.
Where
Uh,
was the old Marymount? I don't remember that. I remember it up on DeCarry Expressway, the service road, and the Côte Saint Luc, right?
okay, so but you know where the French high school is now on Côte Saint Luc? Saint Luc,
St. Luke, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yes, yes. It's further west. Right.
correct.
Yes.
That used to be the original English Marymount.
I see.
Okay,
I
so
see.
before the reorganization of the school boards in '98, Alex, the French school board switched the two buildings. Okay, so that well, anyway, the better building went to one group and the lesser building went to the other group. All right,
Right.
and then I went to Loyola. So I got all of my education here in NDG. Mind you, subsequently, I also got a teaching diploma from McGill, and I also did a graduate diploma in school administration, actually, at Concordia. So I've done all three universities in a sense, and
So for people, sorry to interrupt you, but so for people who don't know, prior to the establishment of Concordia, there was the St. George Williams University downtown, right? And then
correct,
there was Loyola University in the West End. And then
correct,
what happened is those two institutions merged and became Loyola. Is that correct?
became Concordia.
That Concordia, I apologize.
Yeah, you're
And
right. You're right
you
on, Alex.
and
That's
you
exactly it.
went to Loyola before the merger, the fusion of the two institutions.
Correct.
Yeah, so
I went to
you're definitely younger than I am.
and I went to Concordia after the merger. So yeah, I touched quite a few bases. So career-wise, I was in education. I taught for a number of years. I started off teaching history, and most of my career I taught history. Then moved into school administration, first as vice principal and then as principal, and that's where I spent my 35 years. So, and I retired, stayed retired for basically all of 1 year. And then elections came along in 2007. And you may recall, by the way, that the former commissioner for the area was John Sims for a very long time. So he retired, and the door, I got knocks on the door urging me to run. Never thought of that in my life. So I ran for public life the first time in my life in 2007. And hey, here I'm still here. I re-ran in 14, got reelected, then claimed in 20, and looking for a win and another mandate. So I don't know if
Excellent.
I've taken too long, touched a lot of bases there.
No, don't feel that way.
No stress. You have all the time in the world, or until Alex gets hungry.
Yeah, until I need to stick something in my mouth again. You see, it's always there.
I must say, this perhaps sounds, I don't know, a little bit wishy-washy, but I mean, I enjoy doing what I do because education is what I know. All right, that's
Right.
what I spent my entire career in, and so I continue to give back as best as I can, and servicing students and the parents and the schools for me is very satisfying. All right. Unfortunately, there's also the politics at the school board and all that other stuff. But yeah, really, that's the core of why I'm involved. All right. Yeah.
Well, I can say that I've run into you, in my political endeavors, and I always have to say that you've always been a very kind and gracious person, very supportive and intelligent. So, and clearly, you have a dedication, and you are have continued to serve the people of NDG, and I thank you for that. NDG, Montreal West, but I care less about Montreal West. Did I just say that? I am so sorry.
That's
I like you
fine.
too.
Montreal
That's
West
fine.
has really good trick or treating, and that's what I
Oh,
remember
nothing,
growing
nothing
up.
competes with NEG. How can you say such a thing? Oh my
Because
God,
I went
I
to
am
EBS,
shocked.
and EBS flooded
I
the
gotta
area
go
with
over to Holden's
excellent
place
trick
and
or
give him a
treating.
whack.
It's a
I'm
real
sorry, I'll be
fact.
right back.
It's just what it is. It's the unfortunate truth of the life. I mean, it
I
could
am
have changed.
sorry.
I don't know
The,
about the present day. It's been a long time since I trick or treated, but
the
back in the day,
best.
Montreal West held it down. They used to have the fireworks show. The Strathern Park was lit. Like, I'm just saying, it's got
That was
some merit.
yesterday, by the way. All of that is still
Wasn't it
still
a
going
laser
on,
show now?
Holden.
It's a
Sorry.
laser show. I thought it was a laser show this year.
Yeah, but the parade at the Strathern Park, I was there in my old haunt there yesterday. So yeah.
It's wonderful.
The best place for Halloween in the city of Montreal, excuse me, in the province of Quebec, is on King Edward Avenue. There are a number of Halloween nuts on the street,
You know what?
and I
I will
tell you,
say
it's insane.
it's close enough to Montreal West that you could hit both in the same. It's the
Yeah,
same general area.
nah, you just
'Cause,
hit NEG, that's
but
it.
like, I'm gonna say Strathern is a miraculously candy-filled street with a lot of Halloween fanatics, and it's a
This
lot
hurts me.
of people there.
This really hurts
It's a
me.
fact of life, though.
I'm in pain right now.
Lucky
I'm in
kids,
pain.
eh? Lucky kids.
Yeah, I once went trick or treating in like Westmount or something. Not the same. Did not have the
Okay,
same experience.
before we do a Halloween show there, Holland, we're gonna have a little talk, okay?
It's all
Figure
right.
things out first, okay? Because what I'm hearing right now is, I don't know if that's gonna fly. All right, moving
And
on.
change where I grew up.
And moving along. So that's a great origin story. Let's talk about, like, I don't want to get into a lot because, as you know, we had Joe or Tana, am I saying that correctly, on the show, and there's a lot for you guys to, a
Isn't
lot
it
of feathers in
Ortona?
your caps.
Pretty sure it's Ortona.
Ortona.
Ortona,
Ortona.
Ortona.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Got
feathers
one.
in your cap at the EMSB, right? You got like this knockout of the park graduation rate of 95.9%.
That's it.
You're showing the government of Quebec that you guys can deliver an education that's above and beyond the bar that we're seeing in the province of Quebec. You guys have effectively stood up to the provincial government and said, hey, we're a community. We need to be respected. You have to respect the law. And the government is kind of like has lost in front of the courts. And you guys are asserting yourselves. And you're one of the few institutions in the city that actually is really, staking out a territory. But I guess you guys don't have much of a choice because your survival depends upon it to a certain degree, right?
Well, certainly in terms of Bill 40, which does away with school boards. Yeah, I mean, if we lose that one, we're gone.
Right.
Absolutely. So that one, of course, is being spearheaded by the Quebec English School Boards Association, QESBA. On behalf of the 9 English boards. Okay, QSBA is kind of like our umbrella, if you like.
That's Russell Copeman who's in charge of that, right?
Sorry,
Russell Copeman's in charge of that, right?
no longer.
Okay,
Russell was the executive director. All
I
right,
see.
and more or less the voice of QESBA for many years. All right. So when he was executive director, there was somebody else, Luc Lamontagne, who was the actual president, but the communications aspect was left to Russell. Yeah, he's moved on to something else now, right?
Excellent.
QESBA, as I said, is spearheading that on our behalf, and we won a very significant stay, as it is called, all right, that we would continue to exist until basically the legal proceedings, all right, were exhausted, all right, and that for us is obviously very significant because we're still around, and as was mentioned, of course, the French school boards have disappeared since then. So we're awaiting, the presentations were made, so we expect some kind of a ruling later this year, perhaps early 2025. And whatever happens, whichever side wins or loses, I have no doubt there, Alex, that's going to end up in the Supreme Court for sure. All right.
Yeah, and I think it's important because I really see you guys as a pillar of the community and a voice for us, a voice that's lacking in my mind from many different corners of political life in this province. I won't mention names, but I could. I would enjoy that exercise, Joe.
Yeah.
and
I know where you're going with that. We're not going.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going. That's right. The train is not leaving the station, not right now. It's collecting more passengers. So on that note, I think that's important. But the English Montreal School Board, unfortunately went through a difficult period with Mancini, the former commissioner. There was a lot of toxic politics happening there. There was a dark period of the history of the EMSB. And I guess my question to you is, of a gentleman of long standing, and here you are at the end of that road, and now you have this new, you have new elected officials. Do you feel that the EMSB has turned a page and is now in a position to reassert itself after the trusteeship of the Quebec government? If people don't know what happened, EMSB blew up. There was a report, really toxic political environment. The Quebec government made the decision to put it under trusteeship. That was Marlene Jennings that was managing that under the CAC administration. Then she handed, I don't know how that all happened, but the power of the school board was returned to the commissioners. So here we are. You guys are back in charge. Tell us, how's it going?
So, one thing I want to mention that I think is very important, Alex, during the Mancini years, as you called it, um, the politics that was going on at the level of the board, pretty well, I think, for the most part, was at the school board. I can't say flat out that it had no effects whatsoever on the schools, but I think I can say that it virtually did not affect the schools, because even during those years, our graduation rates were good, all right?
Yes, Joe was saying that.
Education was happening,
Yeah,
all right? So I think it's important to say that, all right?
fair
Uh,
enough.
Certainly, I think, as you mentioned, we've turned a corner. Things are a lot more calmer, and I'm not so sure how involved you want me to go into the present situation, because I guess what counts really most important is the external image, and it is very positive, right? All right. So any of my comments really have perhaps more to do with me, especially as an independent school commissioner, right? I'm I'm the only one, Alex. So um,
Can you like
so
elaborate a
every
bit more on what that like the
well
impact of
every
that, or
so every 4 years, all right. So there's an election, as there will be, this coming November.
What's
So
what date is the school board election happening, sir?
November 3rd, all right.
November 3rd. Okay.
Yeah, November 3rd
That's a
are the
what? That's a
polls.
Saturday, a Sunday. Do you know what that
It's a
is?
Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, and the
they put
Sunday
that on my birthday.
previously, sorry,
Happy birthday,
So they
Hogan.
put the election on my birthday.
Right after Halloween.
it's
You
it's always
heathen.
the it's always the
Trick or treating Montreal West. I can't believe you. Go ahead. Sorry.
when we have an election, it's always on the first Sunday in November. That's prescribed, by the way, in the School Board Elections Act. So it's there forever and ever. That's the date, first Sunday in November. All right.
But
Uh,
you say you're independent. Are there parties at the school board level? Because I
well,
thought.
they're not. They're not parties, perhaps in the same sense as we know. Municipal, provincial, federal, all right. But there are what we call teams, by the way, and they come pretty close to that. Uh, 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 a team must be registered at election time, and commissioners who are running on that team must also so register, all right? So it becomes quite
do people?
official.
But do people identify themselves on the ballot as being part of a team?
Correct. Oh,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Um, so in 2020, which of course was not an ideal year, obviously, for elections, right? In the middle of COVID. There are normally elections for the 10 different wards that we have, or school districts, right? Um, as well as for the chair, all right? So you have 11 people there running. Of the 11 people, I was and am the only one not officially a member of Team Ortona, all right?
I see.
So while yes, perhaps that augurs well for the image, reputation of the board, I think a little bit more democracy perhaps would also be appropriate, rather than have 10 of 11 people officially part of a team. All right.
So
Um,
are the other 10 people who are part of Team Tana? Are they like rubber stamping? Because
they
this is what
wouldn't
happened.
like me to say this, but most of the time, yes.
Okay, because
Okay.
you see this at municipal level, and I don't like that. I think
I,
that I think the representatives should be representing their constituents and should be first and foremost acting in their interests and not in the interest of a party or a team. So I'll just leave that piece there, okay? Because
okay. Okay.
I think Joe Ortana has a lot to be proud of as well.
Yep.
But I do have a lot of respect for independent candidates. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
So everywhere in politics, you'll find parties.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It's
Yeah. Parties and are not a are not a great place for independent thinkers. Let's put it that way.
uh,
Oh my God. All right. But hold on, I really like still trying to get over the fact that you go to Montreal West for trick or treating. That's really like
I didn't grow up in NDG, Alex. I grew up on Coast St. Luc Road in Westminster
I know what
over
I'm
on
getting you for
Cranbrook
Halloween
Street.
this year. I'm getting you a
So
jar
you
of
can't get
pickles,
mad
buddy.
at me. I grew up in Coast St. Luc. I didn't grow up in NDG.
Alrighty. Oh, that's
It is
right.
what it is.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So
so,
I grew up right up the street from Edinburgh, and I used to play in the Edinburgh Park, and I used to go to Strathern Park. Like, that was my childhood.
big schoolyard there too in Edinburgh. There. Alex, I don't know if you have another question, but there is something actually that
Shoot. I
I
have
would
lots of
like to.
questions, but if you have something you want to say, go ahead.
I'd like to touch upon it because we all of the discussion last week and mostly now too, is about the school board at that particular level, all right? But there are also, the schools and so since since 98, all right, with the New Education Act, schools have what we call a governing board, all right? Very important, by the way, because they are real bodies, all right, with very significant role, and even have power in terms of approving and not approving certain items. So the school board in each school is made up of up to maximum of 20 people, usually a bit less for elementary. It's made up of an equal amount of parents and staff. All right, that's very important, by the way. The numbers are equal. So the parents there have a very, very important role. The parents are elected for a 2-year term. So there's normally always elections that take place in September. Teachers elect their own members. Also, the professional staff and even the support staff is represented. And at the high school level, there are even 2 students on the governing board, by the way, with voting powers, all right? So these governing boards meet normally, about once a month. It's something I really enjoy attending, although it's a lot of meetings for me. You named all those schools before, so each of those schools, the governing boards of those schools meet once a month. I always enjoy going because you find out so much about what is going on in the school, and I'm there as an observer as such. I'm not an official member, all right? Just like the school principal actually obviously is always there at the meeting, but the school principal is not a voting member also. So I find out a lot about what is going on at the schools, and occasionally I get asked questions, so I act somewhat as a resource person, if you like, all right? And so these governing boards discuss school matters, but also there are a number of areas where, according to the Education Act, for example, where the school board must consult them on an annual basis. For example, in terms of budget priorities, all right? So each of the 65 schools goes through that process, all right, where they put their budget priorities together and submit them to the school board. Another area, for example, is the criteria for the selection of a school principal. Every year, governing boards are asked that, in writing, what is your criteria that you would like to see, let's say, in the new principal, if there's a change for whatever reason. So I just wanted to focus on that because they make a very substantial contribution at the school level. And hats off not only to the parents on these GBs, but also to the staff, because they're there on a volunteer basis, and so once a month they're attending these meetings, and certainly in the English schools, these are very, very active bodies. All right, I just wanted to bring attention to that. I think it's important.
Nah, it is important because, like, I don't know. I'm sure people with parents are very aware of what's going on in schools at the moment because their kids are in schools, but I don't think a lot of people think about any of this and the impact it has and the importance of it, especially for the people that will have kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of people where you may be impacted by this, but you're not there yet in life, but you don't think about it at all. So it's interesting to have that breakdown because I don't know, there's not a lot of people out there that break down school board logistics and governing board logistics very frequently in life.
Right. So another interesting body, by the way, that we have at EMSB, all right, is what we call the English Montreal Student Advisory Committee, or EMSAC for abbreviation. So um, again, on an annual basis, each high school selects 2 students, all right, to this body, and this body meets also once a month. All right. So presently we have 26 students on that body, by the way, and um, I attend those meetings. I'm kind of I'm the official observer, as it were, from the Council of Commissioners. So I attend the meetings on a monthly basis, and I report to the council their discussions and motions which they have passed, and so on. And it's always interesting, by the way, to listen to students. They speak from the heart. All right, they don't hold back in terms of what they have to say, and I find that really, really interesting. All right, one of that group, EMSB, MSAC. All right.
Wow, that's great. So you're giving us a window into, how you have the active participation of the parents, the teachers, and even the students at the schools in determining or having an influence on how, their affairs are managed. And this is our schools, right? This is what's teaching our children, right? So this is really important stuff. But one of the big questions, I'm going to jump in here with a question.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
One of the big questions I have in CDNEG, what I see a lot happening, unfortunately, is like, we talk about the sort of like rewriting of our revisionist history of our history, right? The Quebec experience. But what I also see in CDNEG is that NEG is the largest Anglophone community in Quebec. And what's odd about that is that we don't have bilingual status. And a large reason why that happened is because a lot of Anglophones left, right? Because of these legislations, these laws that were implemented. Whatever, let's not argue over the merit. Let's just talk about the effect of them, right? We had a massive exodus of the Anglophone community. You even admitted to that. 100,000 students, now we're down to 50,000, right?
Even less.
And then what happened in CDNG is the people left, and that vacuum was filled up by newly arrived immigrants. And then the other dynamic that happens in CDNEG is you have these significant allophone populations that effectively, their language of communication in the public sphere is English, but they report their mother tongue as being Italian, Greek, or something else. So it plays a kind of a trick with the stats, right? And adding to that, though, what you have been seeing in CDNEG is the growth of the French school system, right? For example, I went to Centennial Academy. I don't know if you know where that is on Prudhomme, right?
Yeah.
And that building was taken back by I don't know what they call the French school board, the Commission Scolaire Francophone de Montréal. Is that what they call it? I don't know.
a school service center now they're called.
Okay, but they took over that building, right?
Yes.
Because like they don't have enough capacity now in CDNEG for the students that are mandated by the law to get the
Mhm.
primary and secondary education in French. And I just want to, is there like, how does that dynamic play out? Like vis-a-vis you at the EMSB, at the French school board, you're you're in competition with them a certain degree, aren't you? You lose students to them. Some parents make the decision, okay, well, we just want to send our kids to French school, so this is no longer an issue for us. And you guys have introduced immersion programs to try to retain those students. Talk to me about that, because I really like I see you guys as a pillar of the community, but at the same time, you're not really being supported by the government in the sense that our community is shrinking. It's not growing, right? So how does that all play out on a day-to-day basis?
So I'm just going to refer to another situation, actually
Right.
more recent, although it's not applicable here in NDG, but it's the same sort of thing. So
Right.
4 years ago, maybe 5, very recent, all right? In St. Leonard, the government took 2 of our schools, all right? General Vanier Elementary School and John Paul I Elementary School. And in fact, those are another particular legal case that we have, all right, against the government. Not so much for seizing because they have that power, all right, but they short-circuited the process, all right, didn't go through all of the various steps, more or less said, hey, we're taking them, the hell with you guys, and that's the end of that, all right? So again, that's another example, all right, of where you lose an impact, right? I mean, you lose an impact in the communities here because schools, as you know, from your experience, I'm sure, Alex, they're not just educational institutions, right? They're community institutions, right? That are used for all sorts of other
They're
stuff.
hubs. They're hubs. Yes.
Yeah, they're hubs of all sorts of
Sports,
social
social,
activity.
culture, artistic, history,
So if you
name
look
it.
at
Yeah, I remember
NDG,
EBS used to have flea market table things happening in their
yeah,
gymnasium.
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yes, if you look at NDG, of course, yeah, that Centennial there is a good example. Across the street there, that used to be Daniel O'Connell once upon a time. All right. Another case school at NDG that was lost, Summerled School on Summerled. All right. Again, another building which was English at one time is now part of the French system. What can I say? These things hurt, they really hurt. All right, but all right, if the buildings are seriously underused as such, all right, they could use a different purpose, and obviously there's pressures on the government in terms of the need for additional space, right, for the ever increasing French population in their schools. Yeah.
So what do you like? You mean a gentleman of a significant stature, of
Oh,
education,
thank you.
experience, good taste. Um, what do you see for the future of these oddities, these oddball like communities like that I belong to? Like I always tell people I have no tribe, right? I'm the son of an Italian father, Irish French mother, right? Where do I belong in this, right? The only place I feel really comfortable in is kind of this anglophone multicultural like mishmash that has the anglophone community is kind of really closely tied to. So is that going to survive? Is that an environment, a cultural environment that is going to be here 10 years from now? Or is that going to disappear? What's the future hold for us?
Um, I don't have any doubt, Alex, that I think it's going to be here. We are going to be here 10 years from now, all right, even 20 years. will we be here 50 years from now? That is really a serious question. You know, let's consider that really the members of our community, all right, who have left, right? I don't think that there is that drain, a substantial drain anymore of members of our community leaving along the 401, all right? And you know, in a sense, the more we feel like victims in terms of all of these various laws and regulations, maybe the stronger we become and the more determined we become, all right, to stay. I feel like that, you know. I kind of feel I feel that struggle, just like yourself. But at the same time, it makes me, gosh, I'm not going anywhere. They're not gonna push me out, and my kids don't want to go anywhere either. So, um, uh,
Did you think that's what's happening, like psychologically to us? Do you think it's becoming belligerent? Like, ah, you're not getting me from my home, you know, but is that what's happening? You know,
I
this
think to a certain, I think to a
is
certain
this the Up
degree.
movie, you know, where the developers want to buy a guy out? I don't know. I see a lot of defeatism out there and kind of que sera, sera kind of attitude, right? And I don't know. I'm conflicted about that one.
I,
Well, I think maybe that's something that all of us need to put more of an effort into, you know,
See, I think there's a real fear of a talent drain in the English community because it gets harder and harder to justify staying here and trying to do any kind of entrepreneurial or artistic endeavors, to be honest. And unless you're in software, you may as well move for most fields, especially if you're going to medicine or, you know, science or something like that. So it's like, with that happening, do you see like a lot of these students having the same passion to stay once they graduate because they don't have a choice when they're young, but once they hit CEGEP and stuff, are they really incentivized to stay in Montreal post graduation, or even NDG, I guess?
yeah, of course, the you know, situation with careers and jobs, you know, is of concern, right? I mean, certainly you touched on you know, on one aspect, I think very significant in terms of doctors. I mean, we have a shortage of doctors here, right? Okay, and you know, and it's there, all right. They're leaving, and that's sad. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, you know, we'll have in with the students, we'll have a maybe a new generation of students who will want to stay here more. I mean, it's not easy these days. It is not easy. All right. You know, as you said, in terms of potential entrepreneurs, right? Potential professionals. Um, they're certainly under the gun. The pressure is on.
Yeah,
No denying that.
if you're a young person, right, and you have the basic knowledge of math, and you're an allophone anglophone person, and you're struggling to sort of make your place or space here in the Belle Province, right? And then you've got to suffer this constant ethnocentric chauvinism that we're hearing on the radio waves, the TV waves all the time, right? I'm a nationalist. Ici on parle français. La 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 la. And I'm lucky. It's a miracle that I'm here. I started my career in Toronto because I could have never started my career in Montreal the way I was able in Toronto and experience the success I had. That wouldn't have happened to me in Montreal. And saying that, like if you're a young person, getting back to my original premise, I apologize. My original premise, if you do the math, you got the American market, you got the rest of the Canadian market, right? What is that? That's 350, maybe half a billion people. And then you got Quebec, French market. What's that? It's like what, 4.5 million people? Because you got to take out all the allophones and the immigrants out of that. Where are you going to make the money? You're not going to make the money going after the francophones. You're going to make the money going after the anglophones, right? Because
Right.
I really I am very concerned about the long-term viability of our community as long as we're not seen partners as economic and political and social partners of this, this Quebec project, because we're not part of that project right now. They want us to be like them.
Yeah,
And and what I'm saying, does that make sense to you? Am I saying
yeah,
things that are,
it makes sense. As an individual, I like to be optimistic, but there's absolutely no denying what you're saying, Alex. It's tough. It really is tough, and certainly, the dynamics are there, all right, for our educated youngsters to look elsewhere. All right, yeah, it makes, in a sense, it makes perfect sense. They can get employment easier, much better salary, and
If
certainly
it
not
counts,
the
I
kind of
don't even.
pressures that they face here.
I will just add, I don't think this is a Quebec exclusive problem. This is a Canadian problem across the board.
yeah, if you're in the entertainment, you're a rapper, or if
No,
you want
no,
to be a
I'm
pop
talking
star,
about
or,
like
know.
the current economics for a lot of jobs. If you're really, really good at what you do, you're not going to stay in Canada because you'll make way more money doing the exact same job in the States.
Well, that's what I did. I worked for an American company. The only reason why I am in Montreal, the only reason I was in Montreal is because I was down in California and I was the only guy who spoke French, and they needed someone to go handle the French market. Oh, let's send Alex. He knows how
All
to speak
right.
French. And here I am, like, oh, they didn't want me because my French wasn't good enough, but the Americans are sending me back because it's good enough for them.
All right. Kudos to you there, Alex. Good for you. All right.
that's the the short version of Alex's story why he's back in Montreal. Yeah.
Well, in all seriousness, I never thought of leaving.
Well,
Either in
I
the
love
70s or
Montreal.
even today, so.
I love Montreal. Like, I wanted to come back. That's part of the story that I have a love-hate relationship with with Montreal. Right? It's kind of like a marriage.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
got
feel the
myself
Does
in
same
your
way.
wife
trouble.
watch
I
this?
got myself in trouble now. What's that? Poland?
Does your wife watch this?
No, thank God.
Hmm.
Thank God. Saying that, Joe, Lala, I want to, thank you very much for giving us an insight into how the EMSB works, talking about the different levels of administration, commissioners, the governing boards, and even the student participation. Thank you very much for that. And I guess a recap. We have elections coming in November 3rd. You're seeking re-election in Ward 2. Is that
No,
correct?
actually, so just let me clarify that very quickly here.
Okay.
So right now, I am the commissioner for Montreal West and NDG. This is Ward 2. However,
Okay.
come November, will be a candidate in what is renumbered as Ward 5. And Ward 5 is NDG, does not include Montreal West any longer.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay. You're happy I can devote all of my time to NDG. All right.
So Ward 5, it's now Ward 5, just to add to the confusion. And
Ward
that's
5.
happening November 3rd on a Sunday. And when can you vote all day? What time is the
Oh,
polls open?
it's got extended hours. I believe it's from 10 to 8. Don't quote me, but it's extended
Okay.
hours. And by the way, there's also an advance poll the
Right.
Sunday previously, all right? So
Okay.
there are
And
two opportunities.
where can you vote? Is there where do you have to go?
So every elector who is on the official electoral list, you will receive
Right.
a card, all right,
Right.
from Elections Quebec, and it'll tell you exactly where to go and vote. It'll be in one of the schools, all right. That hasn't been sorted out yet.
But I don't have a son I don't have a son or daughter in either high school or elementary school. So how do I know?
I can tell you that you You don't have to have children. It's in the mail. It's sent to you in the mail.
Okay, it's sent in the
You'll
mail.
receive it
Yeah,
at
she
home.
said it's
It's
Elections
not by a
Quebec that
student.
sends it, so
Okay,
they
I have
know if you're
right.
registered to vote or not.
I have
You
another
don't,
question about school
you don't
board
have
tax.
to have children to be on the electoral list, so it's not going to.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So moving along, I have a question about school taxes because I pay school taxes. They're significant. You know, I can't remember what the bill is, but it's a big chunk. I think I'm paying about $1,000 a year in school taxes. Like, how does like the government? Who's collecting the school taxes for me? Are you collecting the school taxes for me, or is there like some body and it's deciding how to distribute it to the different school boards? How does that all happen?
So my answer only applies to the island of Montreal, all right?
Okay,
We have a different system here than the rest of this of the province, right?
right.
So on the island, we have what used to be called the Island Council, Comité de Gestion, all right, which collects taxes on behalf of the 5 school boards on the island. That is the 2 English, the 3 French. So it's one body that collects all of the taxes, and each of the school boards, by the way, has representatives on this body, right? So your taxes don't go to one particular school board as such, okay? So the money is pooled and then is distributed to the 5 school boards on a per capita basis. We have reps there. Everybody has reps there, so the money is distributed, by the way, very fairly. All right.
And how is that model? Is it based on student or is it how is
Yes.
that? Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Yes.
all right,
Okay.
fair
Takes
enough.
into consideration students. Takes into consideration students from less advantaged areas, for example. All right. All of those are factored in. Yeah. That's
And when you talk about less advantaged areas, right? Like, during the movie, What We Choose to Remember, one of the funny stats that came up was that actually what's happening now in Montreal is that the allophones and anglophones are economically disadvantaged vis-a-vis the francophones, right? Does that play out in terms of distribution of funds at the school board level that the anglophones are now members of disadvantaged communities as vis-a-vis compared to say the francophone population, right? Does that come up?
Yes, it does. It's factored in there, actually.
It
So
is.
yeah. So there is a formula used to identify. Last time I looked at it, so don't quote me on this. I believe it was based mostly on the mother's educational background and or income. All right, to help determine. All right. What amount of additional monies boards would receive, in terms of certain areas. But yeah, it goes into the formula, actually. All right.
Okay, now following that conversation, right? I'm sorry, I'm racing ahead here,
No.
but from based on when Joe Ortana was on the show, I hope I got his name
Ortona.
right. Did I say it right?
It's like tone deaf.
Ortona. Okay, we Holden, you discussed that, and we were shocked to hear from him Ortona about the dropout rates and the low literacy rates of students graduating from the French system, right? Now, like I'm very concerned about that from a societal point of view, right? Like I think that when you have people who are not graduating from high school, who are basically functionally illiterate, and you're throwing them in society, right? I know it's a leap and it's an assumption on my part, but statistically, they're more susceptible to be manipulated, right? They're not independent. They're not given the tools to be independent critical thinkers, right? And that really kind of scares me because I think a lot of this kind of narrative and conversation we have in Quebec is being driven by emotion, right? By cultural insecurity, right? And the politicians, the Quebec politicians, feed off this, right? They're driving this narrative, and if you have a significant number of the population who are functionally illiterate, don't really know their history or the history of Montreal, are not don't have the tools to sort of like escape the paradigm that the government is feeding them, right? That to me is a recipe for disaster, not only for them but for us as well. What do you say to that?
Yeah. So
That's a big one. I'm sorry.
yes,
It's
it
like,
is.
can you solve Quebec's problems right now?
Sorry about that.
Thank you for the pressure there, Holden. So, in terms of from an educational point of view, Alex, for the most part, right, the English school boards have a student population which is much more homogeneous as opposed to the French schools, all right, where they have a lot more diversity
Because all the immigrants
from
have to
all
go to
over.
French schools. Yes.
Okay,
Good point.
so that makes it tough, all right, for the teachers, for the administrations. So I think that's also quite significant. I recently had a discussion about that very thing actually with people from the NDG Community Council, right? And they are well aware of the struggles that the non-Francophone students, all right, have, especially with the language, all right? They really struggle, all right, with the French, end up failing the French, and end up dropping out, all right? Like, when I was told this, of course, as an educator, I said, how sad, really, all right, that should be happening. But I think that maybe brings a little bit of light into,
Yeah,
what
that
the
I
situation is.
didn't
No, I mean, you had.
I didn't pick up on that point. That point's an important point because the immigrants, the newly arrived immigrants, they're going to French school. So that's
Correct.
impacting their results, and that's not having the same impact on the Anglophone, the EMSB. That's
Correct.
a huge, massive point. I did not that one went over my head until you mentioned to me. Thank you very much for that insight. That's very smart of you.
I think that's very significant, by the way,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, I think that's.
I have to think about that now because I
But
really
do you
didn't
think
consider
these
that variable.
students, so do you think if the immigrant students had the option of going to English school that the literacy rates would be higher?
Well,
Of course, Joe Lalla's there. They all learn how to read on the second day.
Well, no, but like there's probably a
Third
lot
day,
of,
we're making
because
pasta and food again.
internationally, you're statistically a lot more likely to speak English than French at an international level. So whoever's coming here has probably been exposed to more English than French for most countries, except for the ones that happen to be French in nature, right? So you have a bunch of people immigrating here from all over the world and then not being able to adopt English and are forced into a French system. It can't be that easy to just learn French at arbitrary grade of year that you enter our Quebec system.
Especially, by the way, Holden, especially if they are students, of high school age, right? I mean, at least if they're the younger ones, they have their elementary years to begin to master French, as it were, before they get into high school. But imagine, the Sec 1, Sec 2 students, all right, who come from outside and are put into a French school, and they have to learn that language and pass mandatory or provincial exams before they can get their high school leaving certificate. That's a lot of pressure there, and French is not an easy language to learn either, as both of you know. So yeah, a lot of them have English background. All right, we have. I mean, I don't think we put pressure anymore because it's a lost cause, you know. But for years and years, we were pleading with the government, all right, to at least allow students who immigrated here, all right, who had an English background, went to English school previous to coming here, to be admitted into the English system, right? The answer, of course, was always a flat no. There are no exceptions. Um, on a on a
Yeah, but
human level, those kids would have done a lot better in the English system,
yeah,
obviously.
but the fact that the government is refusing to allow that, it prevents us from having new incomers come in and replenish our stocks, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that is just a way of, it's a slow death in a sense what they're
right,
doing to us,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So this is what I see. Like this conversation that we're having in immigration in Quebec, right, is always focused around this cultural insecurity that francophones have. But I think the anglophone community start asking the question to the feds, and what about our community needs? What about having immigrants that it can, support our history, our place in Quebec, and
yeah.
that kind of conversation. And nobody's willing to have that conversation because no federal politician wants to like antagonize or provoke the nationalists, right? By suggesting that, oh, you know what, you have this significant productive and creative and amazing anglophone community in your province. We need to support them and allow them to
Right.
prosper as well, right? That
Yeah,
should be part of
yeah,
the conversation, right? But it's not, right?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know,
I mean, in the
and
federal
as a
government's
person,
defense, they do have a department dedicated to protecting language minority rights that ironically came from Quebec in order to protect French people and the rest
Thank you
of
for that
Canada,
point there, Holden.
which does inversely actually benefit English people here, but often English people they really do like complaining about a lack of resources instead of looking for all of the ones that do exist for them. So I think that is, if we're being really fair about the conversation, something to bring up. It's like the government already tried to do stuff, and then English people don't apply for grants. They get them when they apply. They just are so beaten into them that they can't win them, that they don't even bother to apply in any. It's to the point where Quebec makes English instructions, English videos, like they're like begging English people to apply for grants. They made us a minority, a real minority. That means we get all the minority status stuff, and English people still don't apply for grants. So
on that note, my application for my subsidy for my train art was refused by the federal government.
only 25% of people get grants, but the fact that English people don't actually take advantage of things that are available for them doesn't help their case at all at a stat level. It kind of makes us passive whiners sometimes. Not guys like Joseph who are out there fighting the system, but a lot of the rest of us.
so
I'm gonna say you, Alex.
you're absolutely right. Of course, you know, the numbers are not being replenished, all right, in the English system. I mean, you know, as an individual, especially as an educator, I mean, my heart goes out to all of these students who are not succeeding and have to drop out in the French system, all right? They deserve a better break. They really do, all right? So
Interesting.
leaving the
Okay.
politics aside and everything, all right, it's just
Right.
sad.
I think that this is Joseph Lalla. I think this is the biggest insight that you've given me, like kind of an epiphany or whacked me a little bit on the side of the head with a lot of food for thought. I really hadn't considered that variable in the way that I should, and thank you for that. So on that note, I unless Holden, you want to talk some more on this subject, but on that note, I want to thank you, Joseph Lalla, for joining us on the show. I want to encourage everyone who knows Joseph or is voting in the EMSB to consider voting for Joseph Lalla. Why? Well, I'm voting for him. I don't usually say this out loud on a show, but he's the only guy I know. And if somebody else who would like to run for what we call now Ward 5 and come to the show and give us a good convincing case why we should vote for them or her, I'm all for that. But I only can run on the information that I have, right, Joe? So saying that, I want to thank you for your time, your good nature, your demeanor, and taking the time to explain to us some of the nuances of what it is to, operate a school board, and also some of the challenges that we're facing as a community. Thank you very much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Thank you, Holden, to both of you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming, and also thanks to everyone who watches this. We appreciate y'all being here. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, tell all the people that we exist. We are a very local community show. The only way we're going to grow is off the good graces of you all out there telling people about us, because the algorithm's never going to favor what we do over here. But we appreciate you all for real. We won't be back next Tuesday because I'm going to be in Puerto Rico. So, well, I'll be on a plane to Puerto Rico at this time.
The pickles.
So, not happening. And then we'll be back the week after when and hopefully I'll be like 2 shades darker than I am, because I'm one of them I don't tan people. I turn red, but we go on with sunscreen. We'll be okay. So yeah, thanks everybody.
And just to add, if anybody wants to chime in and give Holden a hard time about trick-or-treating in Montreal West, I'm perfectly comfortable with that.
Yo, anybody that grew up in the area knows what I'm talking about. Like, this isn't up for debate. It's a real thing. Anyhow, I appreciate all y'all again, and live long and prosper.